With all of these identities out there, usernames, passwords, PIN numbers that companies have to manage, there's no wonder that everybody's turning to the cloud as a way to manage all of those identities. So an increasing number of business functions are being outsourced to the cloud. And despite being a highly suspect marketing term, the cloud really offers some benefits to companies looking to manage large amounts of data or just outsource it completely. There are different kinds of clouds. There are public clouds, private clouds, things that are maintained internal to your own corporate network or agency network, or the clouds that are maintained by outside your network for your own use, or private clouds as well. They intend to provide access for both internal and external users like your employees, your customers, your vendors, your business partners. But generally the problem with all these different services or applications that you might be using and identities that you have to manage is, simply put, there are so many of them. There are so many usernames and passwords that you have to manage. You have to create, issue, revoke certificates or key files, credentials. And it's generally risky based on the number of implementations you have. Your attack surface increases for each of those applications that you now have to manage the identities for. So enter this notion of a cloud identity-based service, or identity as a service. And this allows companies to subscribe to single sign-on, the concept, where you have one username and password to manage multiple applications. And it doesn't have to be cloud applications. It could be internal applications as well. But generally speaking, when you're talking about identity as a service, they are talking about multiple cloud-based applications. By implementing this type of service, you're eliminating the reliance on multiple passwords. You know, Chris only has one account. I only have one username and password I need to remember, and it will get me into 50 websites that I use as part of my day-to-day business. It centralizes the account management and the administrative overhead of creating, issuing, revoking all these identities really gets consolidated down to one point. So you see performance and optimization around that as well. And you can have security enhancements on here through this service as well, like multi-factor authentication, or applications that may not have multi-factor authentication capability. As long as you link it to an identity as a service provider, that service provider can handle the multi-factor authentication for you and just tell the application that may not be multi-factor aware that it's okay and this user is recognized, can log them in. There are some downsides to this, of course. The fact that you're trusting in a single sign-on means when that single username and password or that single identity gets compromised, they've got access to everything that is subscribed to that single sign-on concept. So you're putting your trust in that notion. You're also putting your trust in the notion that the cloud identity provider, your service provider for this, is actually able to maintain security around all those identities as well. Because it's a service provider, I don't have control over those identity management systems. I'm not protecting those usernames and passwords. I'm relying on my service provider to do that now. And that may be a challenge. The centralized management of those credentials creates single points of failure. So if that identity as a service goes down, then I can't log into the websites that I should be able to. The identity product or service that you're subscribed to may not be compatible with everything that you need it to be. And the big downside to this, I think, is that these credentials may be stored on a public server somewhere. Now, there's going to be authentication and security around that server, but the fact that all of those identities are now maintained by somebody else on a server that I don't control, that I have no visibility into from a security perspective, really will make me question how well is that provider handling security. As an example of cloud identity services, just think about your Facebook ID. You can use your Facebook ID to log into a lot of other sites. And how are they doing that? Well, those other sites are relying on Facebook to authenticate you and who you are, and they're trusting that Facebook is able to do that level of authentication and tell them that, yep, this is really Chris, let him into the website. So identity as a service provides a way for companies to kind of outsource credential management and give them a way to adopt single sign-on with very low cost.